Hey everyone, welcome to another Coffee with Kittl. Today I have Mandy with me from Mandy POD on YouTube. You may have seen her channel. If not, it's linked down in the description for you to go and check out some amazing content going on over there, including some Kittl videos, which are really, really great. But today's topic is going to be, is Etsy dead? Is it still valuable? Can I actually get started? Can I actually create designs? Can I actually do things like print on demand and have them sold on Etsy? So maybe you even have some experience doing some handcrafted stuff on Etsy. Maybe that didn't work. Maybe you tried to start a print on demand shop, put it on Etsy, it's not working. And so you kind of just feel like it's not working, it's dead, it's oversaturated. Well, I think we have some exciting things to share today, or rather, Mandy has to share today that we're going to get into. But before we dive into that kind of very scary question of whether or not Etsy is still advantageous, why don't you just give a brief intro on yourself, kind of what your background is, what you kind of do over on YouTube, and then we'll dive into the questions.
Definitely. So my, career before Etsy and all of the print on demand that I do now was entirely in human resources. That was my career. That was what thought I would do the rest of my life. But, got into doing a lot of side hustle things. I'm, definitely in the category of serial entrepreneur.
Right.
And so I actually started on Etsy years ago doing handmade skincare, and that brand grew. And in 2021, ended up taking that full time, decided to walk away from the HR career that I knew and work for myself, basically. And I fell in love with it. I always kind of had HR as backup plan. Maybe I'll go back, this point, never going back, right?
Right.
So, definitely love working for myself and the freedom that provides. And so got into print on demand about a year after going full time with my handmade business, and really became obsessed with that because when we talk about freedom, right, I see print on demand as a huge vehicle for that. I call it freedom from fulfillment because if people are used to, especially when you think of Etsy and having to do everything yourself, there's certainly joy in that and doing something for yourself, but there's also an enormous amount of work with that. There's the fulfillment, there's production, there's, inventory. And in today's economy, it's really expensive, and it's really expensive to house all of that. So I totally fell in love with the idea of print on demand. And, after a few different iterations and attempts, started to see some major success with it. I reached, starting in 2022, so about 2 years ago now, hit the 6-figure mark in about 10 months.
Nice.
And then I ended up, I shared that originally on my TikTok, and people started asking questions. They're like, how do you do this? I didn't know you could do that with print on demand. How do you do some of the designing components of it? So I shared it more, and then realized there's only so much that you can fit into, a 30 to 60 second TikTok. So that's when I started my YouTube channel at the beginning of last year. Ended up creating a shop that I could use on Etsy specifically for just teaching, obviously knowing that if it's going to be public, everyone going there are people who are, my audience searching. So obviously didn't want to rely on any sort of conversion rate with that. So I specifically put in the work and created one so that I could teach with it, take people behind the scenes, show them how to do all the different things that I had done along the way.
Yeah.
And then, continue to build that and share that. So it's been a fun ride.
Wow. Yeah. That's very interesting from the HR background to now teaching.
Right. Who'd have thunk?
Print on demand on YouTube. That's very interesting and hopefully encouraging, right? Hopeful and helpful for those that may be in the constant 9 to 5 that they just don't care about, or maybe they even do like it, but they just want to try to experiment with something else, or they actually want to get into this kind of entrepreneur lifestyle. Out of curiosity, what were you selling handmade stuff, the handcrafted? What was that you were doing?
So I still have that business. It's handmade natural skincare. So, unfortunately, nothing I could really outsource heavily, although Printify does have skincare now. So there's an avenue there. But yeah, so I still do that. on the side of everything else that I do. I haven't quite been able to let that go, maybe someday, but it is fun
Yeah.
to do. So,
Okay. Yeah, interesting. Okay, I'm always curious because I have a lot of I've met a lot of friends, collaborators of Kittl that actually do have the kind of first tier experience with the handcrafted nature on Etsy. So I'm always curious to hear what they were selling. But in terms of our main topic for today, you actually started a separate shop in just 2024, right? So an Etsy shop
yeah.
to kind of maybe test and see this if it could work, right? If I could still actually grow, if I could still make sales. Now, a lot of people do this because they want to. When I say a lot of people, I mean kind of a lot of people who teach uh, Proud Man or Etsy. They do this to try to warrant what they're saying is true, and that if you put in the work, right, it'll work. So I have some questions geared around this new shop that you've just done in 2024, and what I believe you mentioned is probably more now because this was a little while ago. You said it's probably close to 200 sales already. Is that accurate?
Yep, it's up and over the 200 mark now.
Okay.
So, yeah, it's been
Okay.
pretty cool.
Got it. So when did you start this new shop? Let's just go. I'll just go linear down kind of the questions I have about this. So when exactly did you start? You listed that first product in 2024.
It was at the very tail end of February. Kind of had this
Okay.
wild idea, saw some trending things. Like, I'm just going to try it and do what I know and see what happens.
Okay. Okay. So yeah. So we're around the kind of like 4 to 5 ish month in around that past that 200 sales mark. So that's really great. Um, with those sales, about how many reviews are on the shop right now?
I want to say that I haven't looked, there's probably right around 30 or 40, I
Okay.
think.
Okay,
Yep.
great. Yeah. Okay, great. Yeah, I'm always just curious to see the ratio of sales to reviews because I think with a lot of people, including myself, depending on what you sell, getting the sales eventually is kind of a consistent thing, especially if you're going to do ads. Like you're going to enable Etsy ads, or like what I'm doing right now is putting all of mine in the lumped Father's Day sale thing where it's like several weeks long of just all of your products being on sale. But
Mhm.
then it's like it doesn't always convert to a review. So I'm always curious to see what the sales to review ratio is. Now, obviously, we're not going to give any names of the shop, of course, because we want to make sure that the traffic for that test for that shop that you're utilizing kind of stays consistent so you can continue to use it as an example, and we don't want to like send a bunch of people there and like have the traffic go way up and then get no sales, and then Etsy doesn't like that. But are you able to tell us like what I'm assuming it's print on demand, what products are you specifically offering on that shop?
I am someone that, even though, again, the whole Etsy is dead, apparel is dead, I still like apparel. So it's
Mm,
primarily apparel.
mm,
So I've been testing out kind of that Y2K nostalgic vibe.
mm.
So kind of
Okay.
the baby tees, and I also really like comfort colors.
All right.
And so I was curious to see, comfort colors are in such high demand. So
Mm,
I was curious to see, okay, there's demand as an aesthetic for kind of this nostalgic side, but then there's also demand from a product side. So
interesting.
it's like, which one kind of, is there a difference? Will they both sell? How will they compare? So I'm someone who just likes, I like to test things. I'm not afraid to experiment. And I think that's so important, especially in Etsy as a marketplace, to just keep testing, keep trying, see what
Hmm.
works. And
Hmm.
that's kind of what I've always done with my shops when I start them. And it was no different here. So apparel has been the primary. And then when I start to get a design that sells, I like to also add like a complementary product. So sometimes that's a mug. And in this case, I went kind of the tote bag route.
Okay.
So
Okay.
that's what I've been using in that store. And surprisingly, the baby tees and comfort colors, they're for a while, the baby tees were like the biggest. And then when I started adding more as designs would sell, I would scale them to like a comfort colors and then compare. And I'm starting to see like comfort colors is starting to surpass that. So
Okay.
there's still clearly demand there. So it's interesting.
So I'm not sure I'm familiar with this word. Are you saying baby tees? Is that a type of apparel, or are you saying
So
like
think like 90s Y2K, like 2000s, kind of the trend and style that was really popular for kind of that
yeah, yeah.
youngerish
Okay.
crowd. And it's achieved so you can get products with print on demand that are specifically like crop tops or baby tees.
Right.
But the
Okay. Okay.
trend right now is actually, or has been at least up until now, to use actually Gildan 5000B, which is a youth size
Hmm.
shirt. And then you just make sure you explain really carefully, like in the description and listing photos, that we achieve this specific look by using these baby tees or youth shirts.
Hmm. Okay.
So,
So uh is the shop geared towards youth, like up to like 14, 15, 16 years old, or like that's what I'm trying to figure out, is like the sizing. Like when you hear something like that, you assume it's like for small for small bodied individuals, where when I think Y2K or nostalgic, I think oversized fit, particularly.
I think it depends on the aesthetic. This is more so about achieving like a specific look.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
it's really kind of, and it's becoming more and more popular with what I would call, and this is not my demographic, so this is just from research, but like
Sure.
Gen Z kind of,
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, I get it. Yeah.
younger, not necessarily like young, but just kind of that trendy, you know, everything that's old is new again, right? We
Sure.
always come full circle with
Sure.
these generations. So I think it's some of that, but yeah,
Okay.
I see it on a lot of different other websites, in terms of trends and different things like that.
Right.
So,
Okay, but it's not necessarily because the reason I was asking that question is like if it if the Etsy shop is geared towards the youth, like those that level 13, 14, 15, 16 year olds, they don't really have the money to go on Etsy and buy anything.
yeah, they don't really
Uh,
have the disposable income
no,
yet.
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
no.
So that's why I was trying to figure out like what I mean when you say anything Y2K or nostalgic, of course, like the 25-year-old and below area is kind of what I think of. And so I guess I've not thought about that, but I guess, yeah, you have this kind of divergence in style of really kind of heavy, oversized, boxy looking apparel, but then you also have this kind of tighter, like you said, cropped, kind of like squeezed
Yep.
look, right? This kind of punk rock, I guess, mixed with Y2K aesthetic, which I hadn't thought about. So that's really interesting. Um, so you're offering apparel, shirts and stuff, and then you said that you've added the tote bag. Now, adding the tote bag, you said a phrase like as a complimentary item, right, or a subsequent item that they might be interested in. How did that work for you? Did you actually see someone adding the kind of like token shirt that I'm assuming is doing well, or token whatever, and then adding that tote bag? And if so, what is it, just the same kind of design, or how did you go about adding that extra item?
Yeah, it depends on the design. Obviously, some work better. Obviously, apparel and totes are two very different products. So
Hmm.
it's more so about some designs really lend themselves well as, and also fit on an accessory. So if a design does well over here, I'll try it over here as well and see if I can see some similar results. Sometimes they buy them together, and sometimes it just because they like that style, that just naturally boosts it kind of in more of that accessory category.
Hmm.
And so I'll see some sales there too.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, you're, I think, maybe this third person that I've talked to about adding tote bags specifically. So I guess that also kind of fits that style, that nostalgic style, right? Tote bags are kind of coming back into fashion. I don't know if they ever
And you
last.
think about kind of practicality too.
Yeah,
You think about, if they're, especially a demographic, maybe they're using it for like farmers market
oh,
or
exactly.
groceries or
Yep.
just kind of that vibe, or books or something
Hmm.
like that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, I do a lot of pop-ups on the weekend, kind of these kind of like little markets around either coffee shops or breweries and stuff, and I sell a lot of tote bags. I sell a lot of tote bags and drawstring bags that I'm just like printing here myself, but it's definitely that is cross generational. I think the tote bag style, so that could be an interesting idea for just a shop just all about tote bag. Now, so we have some of this real statistics you've shared and that we've gathered, right? So we just started another shop. You just started another shop. You already passed the 200 sales mark. You've got reviews on it. You've added multiple products on it. Products have been selling consistently. So without being too vague, like why is that working and why is Etsy not dead? That's I think the big scary question that will cause someone to not jump in, because it's like, well, everybody else is doing it better, right? And everyone else is doing it well. So why is it working?
And I think that's where some of that comes into play is we assume that all these people are jumping in on Etsy and all these people are doing well. But the reality is, when we think about the millions and millions of sellers, right, that are on Etsy and, it's huge. There's so many. How could you possibly break through any of that noise, right?
Mm-hmm.
When the reality is, it's I think of it like a funnel, right? You've got all these people coming into Etsy thinking, I'm going to start a shop. You've got a smaller portion who actually get beyond even opening their shop and getting
Okay.
something listed. And then from there, you have people who, might throw one or two up and call it a day and nothing happens. And then that shop, just becomes inactive. So you start to get narrower and narrower in terms of what's actually out there on Etsy that people are really buying. That's good. Where you've got sellers who I think on, the famous, investor report or Drossman said, the skill and the will. And I
Mm-hmm.
think those are important. The skill you can build over time. And if you have patience and if you're willing, Kittl tutorials. I didn't know how to use Kittl when I first started.
Mm-hmm.
I
Sure.
watched a lot of you and others showing how to make things,
Sure.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
YouTube University. That's what's beautiful about the age that we live in.
Mm-hmm.
You can learn those skills, but that will,
Mm-hmm.
and, as an entrepreneur, that willingness to keep going, keep pushing, keep experimenting, keep learning, and not just, sometimes we hear, I've got 1,000 designs in my shop.
Mm-hmm.
Well, did you learn anything in the process from
Mm-hmm.
that? Or did you just throw a smattering of 1,000 listings out there? But if it's 1,000 bad designs that you didn't learn from along the way and
Mm-hmm.
gradually improve,
Mm-hmm.
you spent a lot of effort. And you might think that you did all the things you were supposed to by having all this out on Etsy, but you didn't actually learn anything and accomplish and pay attention to the data and the market and what your shop data can tell you. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that's such an important part is, you know, I scale fast. That's one of the things that I've always done with my shops. I work in batches and kind of time blocking is one of the things I'm kind of known for and kind of how I work through that.
Right.
But I do it specifically. I research, I put in the research, I look for the trends, I look for the clues out on Etsy and other places of what's in demand, what are people actually buying for? And then can I tie that to something that's going to resonate with a specific audience? And then when I do and I figure that out, I start batching designs so that I can work in batches and be very efficient and get lots of listings up in relatively short order. But
Mm-hmm.
I do it not for the sake of volume. I do it for the sake of getting data back in return, because then I can see which designs are performing better. Where am I starting to see visits, clicks, and favorites? And then there, I can start to lean into those and say, okay, this new shop, I actually started in kind of one direction,
Sure.
and I wasn't seeing a ton of initial response to it. And so I had started another direction kind of at the same time just to see which one worked.
Okay.
And I started to see clearly where I should lean in more, because the data in my shop and where I was seeing demand and where I was starting to see much more favorites and, eventually sales take off. And then I could lean into that, and then I could build out from there based on what's working, versus getting 1,000, designs in just for the sake of it, and then realizing they're not going anywhere because I wasn't learning along the way.
Right.
And so when we think about Etsy being, dead or it not working, it works, but you've got to be able to kind of use the data, learn, see what's in demand, but then also, again, that will of continuing to push forward and experiment and try new things so that you can start to see eventual traction, because everyone starts in different places.
Right.
When I first started, my design skills, 2 years later, are not what they were two years ago when I started. It took time to learn and get better. And this stuff, even in my main shop that sells now, it's well over the 200K mark in 2 years. And the stuff that sells now is not necessarily even what I started with, because my
Okay.
designs have gotten better. And that
Yeah.
takes time, right? That's a learned skill.
Right.
So it's that willingness to learn and keep pushing forward that I think is super important, that, is missed in a lot of Etsy sellers. And like I said, there's a big market. There's a lot in the market. Is it filled with a lot of things? Yeah. Is it filled with a lot of good things? Not necessarily. So if you can figure out how to learn to design well, use templates like what Kittl has, I think that's a big part of, even my main shop, of some of the stuff that I've used, and even in some of my newer shop things, is it gives you that leg up, because I'm not a graphic designer by
Right.
trade at all, right? I'm in an office HR person, right? That's that's me. But I, figure out little shortcuts and learn things along the way. And there's little things you can do to improve on that and use the tools that are available to be better than, that 99% of Etsy that's just coming out, trying it, testing it, and then walking away,
Yes.
right?
Yes, that's exactly right. So if I kind of, funnel all of what I'm hearing, it's kind of more of this: what is your why behind it, right? The why this design style, why this product, why does this work versus this not working, right? And so that's a very different starting place, having a why. Even if it's just curiosity, that can be a great why. But that's very different than what we like to call the set it and forget it mindset, or the style, right? Where you basically get a ton of different designs and you throw them up on a lot of different products, and then you just kind of wait and see. But then it's almost like you have too many different products to try to discern from. And then a lot of times most people aren't even looking into that data, or certainly not looking closely at 1,000 different listings or designs or whatever. And there's no connection, right, to them. So, and I also really like the point you made about the kind of why behind the design. So you were saying, like, the ones that are going to be most successful have this will, have the reason to continue going forward, to be consistent in learning and improving. I think that's really, really important, as opposed to just using one template 1,000 times, right? And just hoping for the best, right? Is actually like iterating, changing, getting unique, throwing different elements, throwing different illustrations, testing different typography, and seeing what works depending on what your style is, what your niche is, and things like that. So I think that's really, really good advice, is to have this kind of why. Another way to think about it, a word, a phrase I use a lot is reverse engineering, right? So if my shop could be immaculately successful in 4 or 5 months, like we say, like we use yours as an example, what would that look like? In the, like, what do I need to do, I guess, to get there? If my shop could be and look super successful, that means I need to know exactly who I want to come to the shop to purchase these things, which means I know exactly what products to do, which means I know the style, which means I know blah blah blah. And then, like you said, batching and time blocking, all these are very productive, practical things. And I kind of want to ask a little bit about that, because there might also be a misconception behind people thinking you need these really fancy and, you know, kind of gate kept tools. Now they used to be a lot stronger. Unfortunately, now a lot of the tools, like, you kind of have to pay to get there. But what it sounds like from listening to you talk so intensely about the looking at your own kind of Etsy analytics, the stuff that Etsy gives you, you didn't really mention any of these tools. And I think that that's a roadblock for some people, where they listen to what would be an Etsy guru or a getting started, and someone's saying, like, now you're going to want to use X, Y, and Z, right? You're going to want to use Everbee. You're going to want to use whatever. Do you, I'm assuming that you didn't have those things in mind when you were getting started, and if not, why? And do you think that those are like necessary prerequisites to doing the research effectively? I know that they are good. They are good tools, but to get the most out of them, you have to pay for them. So what's kind of your advice and thoughts on that area?
Yeah, so one of the things that I think is important is, these tools, I don't pick a third party, it doesn't matter which one it is.
Mm-hmm.
They're all, when we think about search data and things like that, Etsy doesn't release any of that. It's proprietary only to Etsy. So they're all using a variety of different data sources. It's not that they're not trusted and don't work and have, some level of,
Sure.
insight, but at the end of the day, demand lives on Etsy. That is the single source of truth, right? So one of the things I like to do is, visually look on Etsy. Where are, and go beyond just scratching the surface of bestsellers. I look for, the popular nows. But even beyond that, I click into, the first several pages, not even the first several pages, as I'm doing just really broad searches, right? Women's shirts, or, even, mom gifts or something like that. Things that are like, oh my gosh, I never designed for that. It's super broad.
Right.
However, you can see some demand, you can pick up on some early trends in really big, broad searches. So I start there, and then I start diving into the listings. And if you click into them, you see what I always call little red magic words. So that's where you see, like, 3 purchased in the last 24 hours, or in demand, or
Mm-hmm.
in 20 plus carts,
Mm-hmm.
or, 20 plus views in the last 24 hours. These are things that aren't guaranteed to be bestsellers. However, they're really good clues of where there is active demand taking place on Etsy, because Etsy wants other customers to see that information and create that sense of urgency of,
Mm.
this is a really popular thing, you should buy it now. Because remember, it's there for customers,
Right.
not for us as
Yeah.
sellers.
Yeah. True.
So
True.
it's there for a reason, and Etsy wants to clearly keep driving more purchases of that. They're creating that sense
Mm.
of urgency. So we pay attention to that. So I think that's a great starting place of, especially from, the design demand side of things, of learning what is actually selling, what typography is popular, the big, like, varsity letters with
Mhm.
different coloring styles, minimalist styles, or, what color palettes even are doing really well. All these different things that you can pay attention to that help to inform, especially, that demand and design side of things. Where I do think it can be helpful to have tools, and I've used eRank for forever, even my
Mhm.
handmade shop
Okay.
years ago when I started that. So, and it's one of the more, in my opinion, affordable ones for people just
Sure.
starting out. So I
Sure.
like that one because I can do then very broad searches. Like if I have zero idea of a niche or, things like that, I can start to identify at least some starting places for keywords where I think there might be some higher search volume, like, different sports. Maybe I might type in all the different sports I can think of, like pickleball or golf or football
Hmm.
or, dance. And I can see from there, I can start to at least prioritize maybe where I might want to start.
Hmm.
If I can see where there's appearing to be some decent level of searches
Right.
and lower competition from that standpoint. But then, like I said, I'm always validating and remembering to go back to Etsy because data and keywords are part of it. But if you're missing out on the whole visual aspect of demand and understanding what's selling and what makes a good design, studying those bestsellers, not to copy, but to really understand why is this selling? If I'm starting to see multiple color palettes, why are those
Mm.
selling? Is that a particular aesthetic I should pay attention to?
Hmm. Hmm.
What keywords are they using to, get people to this listing?
Mm.
All those little things you're seeing, you have to do that on Etsy.
Yeah.
So if you're just focused on just looking at numbers or just looking at keywords, that's not going to get you all the way there. That's not going to make you any better at creating a design and a product that will sell. You've
Right.
got to be able to have that clickability, desirability, not just the discoverability that can
Mm.
come from that keyword SEO side of things.
Got it. Yeah. So, I mean, I really like the advice that Etsy is the source of truth here, which totally makes sense. I think perhaps there can be too much of an emphasis on these extra tools, these extracurricular tools, which are helpful and can be good and can obviously show you, yeah, they can show you things like it's generated this amount of money or whatever, based on historical data. But I think like I really like your tips about the urgency and why Etsy is designed to show what it shows to the customer and what we can learn and discern as sellers from that information. I think that's really, really good. And you do the same thing on all of the different levels. Like you said, you look at those the nice red text or the in such and such carts, and then you have multiple of those, right? And then you say, all right, what are the common denominators between all of these extremely successful things? Like you said color palette, you said maybe design style, could be the actual garment itself. You were mentioning comfort colors earlier, which is a great example of that. That's really good. That's really good stuff. Now, I think one of the important things in all that we've discussed so far is obviously the willingness to consistently dive in and get into that, and to have the desire, the want to do this consistently, because that's what's going to win. In your funnel analogy that you gave, where it's like the top of the funnel is just everybody wanting to start an Etsy shop, and then the winners are the only ones that continue to fight to get to the bottom, right? They don't get tired, they don't get discouraged, they don't get, well, I mean, you can get tired and discouraged, but I'm saying they
You can
let it
get plenty of that. It's what
yeah,
you do with it,
right,
right? It's
exactly.
what happens when you get there, and do you stop or you
Hmm.
just you
Hmm.
take a break, which is normal. We're all human,
Right,
right?
right.
And then you get back on it. You find maybe your source of inspiration
Mm,
of, maybe it's doing some more scrolling. I like to create little trend boards where I'm kind of
mm,
collecting some of those little
nice.
things
Okay.
out on Etsy so that I can see them all together.
Mm,
It's just, little things like that. But that's why I say, when we think about top sellers doing well, I call it a superpower, right?
sure.
Consistency is the superpower,
Yeah, it is.
right?
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah. So I think the last thing I want to talk about is maybe where Kittl can help with this, and I just kind of want to hear from your experience, because I know there's a couple of features specifically that you like that have helped and kind of bolstered Maybe workflow. That could be another hang up for people, especially if they're just getting started. And obviously, there is a variety of different tools for different reasonings. We just mentioned some that are more kind of technical, back end, search specific, like an eRank, like an Everbee, or something like that. But then there are also your powerful design tools, of which there are many options. And we try to be a leader specifically in a variety of different design projects, creative projects, things like that. One of them being Print on Demand. And so I kind of want to just hear from you, where can Kittl help with this? Where does Kittl help with this in your workflow? And perhaps why someone would give it a try if they're wanting to start their own Etsy shop.
I think what I love most about it, and where it's helped me in all of my shops, is being able to start with templates, right? Coming up with designs. If you're not a graphic designer by nature, which again I am not, never have been,
Sure.
but being able to start not from scratch, but still having again, I call it a starting place. You can still add your own words, connect it to a specific niche or ideal buyer. But you're starting with designs and concepts that already look good, right? And there's lots of different avenues. Like there's the Y2K, there's grunge, there's, kind of the more boho, there's, the butterflowers, there's the wavy text, there's all of that, right?
Yeah.
So you can kind of pick your avenue. It's not that you have to, it's not that you're backed into a specific style. There's lots out there. And I will tell you, like I said, even my original shop that I, started with, when I started using Kittl and adding designs used based on the templates that I, changed and updated, but were based on Kittl templates, those designs sell better than many others that were previously made, like on my own.
Right.
So I think that really speaks to, they're good designs. Certainly don't want to use them as is, because obviously thousands of other people are trying to do the same thing.
Exactly.
But again, I consider it a really good starting place. And I think that's what's super important and helpful in this process, especially as a beginner, like I said, where most people are coming into this without any sort of like, I had never made a t-shirt before. I had never designed anything for a tote bag before. Sure. And I know that's the majority of people going into this. So I think that's one of the really big things. The other piece that I really use a lot now is, and I'm probably going to say the name of it wrong, but it's the Infinite Artboard. I think it's Infinite, right? I think I originally called it something else.
Infinite Canvas, multiple artboards. Yeah, either one. Yeah.
Essentially, you can have one view, multiple artboards, multiple designs, basically. And that's what I love, because that's how I got my start. Again, when I first started Print on Demand, I was doing my handmade business full time. I'm a mom. I've got a life. So I have what I call just pockets of time where I can work on things. So it's about being super efficient to still scale relatively quickly. And so batches and batching designs has been a really core part of my process, and was no different in this new store as well. And so being able to, what I call batch. So when I do that, I'm focusing on one kind of niche or one ideal buyer at a time. So I'm not bouncing around to different concepts, but I'm creating multiple designs in that one avenue in one sitting. I may get 3 or 4. I might sometimes get 9 or 10, depending on if I'm feeling real creative in that moment. But I can keep going in one artboard, one infinite kind of canvas to add multiple designs. So I don't have to stop, open up a new one, go back, stop, open up a new one.
100%.
I can just keep going. So it just creates a really nice flow. I'm in the zone. I'm thinking of one ideal customer in mind. I'm trying out. I can pull in templates directly to that, as many as I want to as I'm going.
To the artboard.
Yep. So it just, again, it's about that workflow. And it's just, these aren't huge, earth-shattering things, but it's little stuff like that. It's having a starting place with templates, and then it's being able to just work efficiently that add up over time and just really help that process along.
Right. Absolutely. Well, that's excellent to hear. Yeah, we definitely want to make sure that we're providing the best workflow, right, for ideation. That's something that's really important, like you said. And one of the big reasons behind the infinite canvas, the ability to add multiple artboards, is now that you can feel the freedom to test all around that thing. You can duplicate, you can just go crazy with the colors, you can start to add different illustrations, you can duplicate it again and change the typeface 100 times, and you can take it off the artboard and take it apart over, and so this idea of ideation within a style, a trend, a niche, or whatever you want to call it, is extremely valuable and important. And so that is great to hear that that you're using it, for your shops, and that it seems to be working. So that's really, really great. Now, I want to give you the floor to talk about anything that's upcoming on your YouTube channel, anything that's exciting. I believe you have a course. I can't quite remember. But anything else, like where someone might want to learn more from you, where they can follow you, anything like that, I want to give you the floor to speak about that for just a little bit.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, my YouTube channel, I try to get new videos out every week, every other week, depending on what's going on. I do have a free course. I try
Hmm.
to create it as a comprehensive one that's right directly on my YouTube channel. You can totally binge the entire thing. It's, I believe, 9 episodes. So you can totally binge the whole thing. And that is, a way to get started. I do plan on updating that this year. So that's kind of on my docket, is to have
Nice.
an updated version of that, because that was from early last year that I posted that. And there's only been a couple of Etsy changes, since then. No big deal.
Sure.
Um, and then I do also have a membership as well. I call it the Simply Thrive Club, which is where I tend to hang out a lot of the time with my members that are there. And it's really about that, helping people navigate that hurdle of consistency, in really having that place to go where people get
Mhm.
it, where people get how challenging it can be, so that people don't feel alone. I mean, certainly we do all the things of, I do a masterclass every single month. We do live calls
Sure.
every month to answer
Sure.
questions. There's certainly all of that, but it's really intended to be a place to be supportive and encouraging and help people navigate this Etsy print on demand journey.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, I will grab those links to the course and have them all down in the description for everyone to go and check out. Of course, there's also some of Mandy's amazing Kittl tutorials that you don't want to miss, that are great. And another thing that I want you all to do, all of you that are watching, if there was something specific that Mandy was talking about that we were discussing, and you want to dive deeper into that, or it didn't make sense, I would love for you to comment that down in the comments, because that's great material for us to make videos, for Mandy to make more videos, even if it's just as simple as a question, or if it's something more deeper, like behind the looking at Etsy, the back end of Etsy, the views, the like, all of the analytics and stuff. Even if it's something nuanced like that, would love for you guys to comment down below so that we can best help you, right? Even if it's something like this feature would be really helpful, that would also be, well warranted. Go comment that down below. Now, before you leave, I would love for all of you to subscribe. Of course, go check out Mandy's channel, but please subscribe to the Kittl YouTube channel. If you've watched this far, I'm assuming you're subscribed. If you're not, do me a favor, hit it. It's right there. And then like this video and share it if you think it was helpful. Mandy, thank you so much for taking the time to hang out with me and discuss this. Everyone watching, thank you for watching and listening. We will see you in the next one. Bye.